All right, good morning. So this is kind of sad, but this is the last time that I'll probably see all of you in one spot, which makes me sad. I think we should just stay in this room all day together and we'll never leave, right? We'll just stare at each other for hours, right? And then you'll be really ready to go. But yeah, today's our last day of lecture. I'm gonna give you a few minutes. In just a minute, I'll give you a couple minutes to check in with your group before we do the little group presentations that we had on this. But I'll talk about this at the end just to remind you, we do have our final on Wednesday. And then again, today's the last like normal day. I will be here during finals week and I will be here on Wednesday. So if you want to meet with me at either time, I will be here, but we won't have like another formal class after today. So yeah, it's kind of sad, right? I get sentimental, so it's sad. Anyone taking, I heard you talking about psych classes, anyone taking a class, another psych class coming up, or yeah, which one? Nice. Anybody else? Yeah, social psych, that's a good one, right? After this class, if you are a psych major, so we obviously have a wide variety of classes, and we have a new psych person who's supposed to start in the spring, so we'll see. Don't know anything about this person, I don't even know who it is yet, right? Waiting to find out who we finally picked. What was that? Yeah, we went through that whole hiring committee and they just did the presidential interview. So we should have a new person, but I don't know who yet. The president gets final say. So, but I teach, if you wanted to take another class with me, I don't think I teach any in person other than this one and human sexuality, which is a fun class. And then I teach research methods, but online and intro psych online. But I hope you take other classes. I hope you come say hi. Right? Again, I end up getting attached to all of you. It's like we finally get this great dynamic and then it's over. It's really sad. So, but I won't worry about it. We still have like an hour. I won't think about that yet. But what I want to do is give you a couple of minutes to check in with your group and just kind of finalize any thoughts or anything you need to do. Figure out who's going to share. So what we're going to do after you do that is I'll just have you present from your chairs. And you're just going to share a little bit about your person, their background, their crimes, and then their legal proceedings. If you didn't look it up, look up where they are now. I think that's kind of an interesting way to end as well. So I'll give you a few minutes and then we'll go through those. Don't forget to write all your names on that sheet that you're turning in, but I'll give you about 5 minutes and then we'll go from there.
And those speeds that she said. Oh, wow. Yeah. All the children Other people work for the rest. Yeah.
Checking to see if, yeah.
Oh.
But
And they will be. You know, you stay there and you know, program, and so you know what? Really? I mean, I'm here to try. Because we've all been. But if you're ready, I mean, there's these. They want to say. Like. Like invading us. Yeah. Yeah. Well.
So just another minute.
It's not. He tried.
So all we'll do is we'll take a few minutes. Your presentation should only be a few minutes, right? And again, you're just informally sharing. Don't be too intimidated by it. But I would like to ask that when anybody else is talking, please make sure that you're not talking as well. Give them your attention and respect. It's intimidating to talk in front of your peers, so let's always be respectful of that. And then I'll just collect your sheets from you when we're done. But does anyone want to go first? Anyone want to get it out of the way? Yeah, I love it. All right, so just make sure you tell us who you have, obviously, and then go for it.
So, her background, she grew up with her mother, who was called Edie Blanchard, and Edie made false claims that Gypsy suffered from multiple health issues. So that resulted in them having a series of diagnoses and medical interventions. So she received treatment that she didn't even need treatment for. So Dee, it was believed that she suffered from monstrosities by proxy, so she made her daughter sick to empathy from other people. So when Gypsy was 8, her mother claimed that she was suffering from leukemia and muscular dystrophy. And then she also claimed that she had seizures, asthma, hearing and visual impairment, so that was just going on and on. And then the grandmother's opinion was they were murder. The Gypsy plan for the Nicholas to come up with Springfield, Missouri, to stab deep into Nigeria, which was actually 17 times, so she died in 7. And then she pleaded guilty for murdering her mother, but the prosecutor acknowledged they used such a standard throughout her life. And they decided on a minimum sentencing of 10 years for second-degree murder. And then Nicholas faced first-degree murder, and I think just without parole, but Gypsy can start parole as early as December of 2023.
Next year, next question. Anything else? Okay, great. Take a look at that roll clap for everyone, right? It's great. Thank you. And that's where we start to get that guilty with diminishing capacity, where you get that lesser verdict because of things that happen. We took it into account, but not enough to be found like not guilty and so on. And who wants to go next? Number 2? Anybody? Yeah, get it out of the way, right? Might as well.
Yeah. So we're talking about the Slender Man. It was Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser. They were both fixated on the Slender Man, which was like a creepy monster character created during an image editing competition in 2009. And they claimed that killing their friend would, like, as an offering to him, would appease him and they would give him a gift. It turns out that they had pre-schizophrenia, and both of them experienced hallucinations and ghosts and whatnot, which influenced their belief. And they stabbed their friend 19 times in the wood. I forgot, no, it was something else I read. That's it.
All right.
But yeah,
Just go ahead.
basically their obsession with the fictional character, they lured their friends into the woods. And another part of the Slender character has to do with the forest itself, as the game with notes. And they ended up stabbed friend 19 times and survived 6 days later.
So, in conclusion of all that, your child basically stated that Wire claimed she was mentally ill during the attack, not responsible for her actions, so she, fled for insanity. And she got sent to a mental institution rather than prison. She's been there. She just got out, I think, a few years ago, and there's now like parole with like watch permanently the rest of the life. Yeah, that makes sense. And then Geyser is not guilty to one child of the first degree murder because of like the resistant sport effect, but she's still getting on stuff. So they both kind of like, I don't want to say got away with it, but they definitely got off the leash a little bit.
Sure.
So that's kind of what they are.
Yeah, and it's why I think if they had, because they didn't actually murder her, it was just stabbing. What was it? 16 times, 19 times, 19? Yeah, just 19 stabs, right? That's it. And really fortunate that she lived, or their sentences might have been very different. But yeah, they both had quite a bit of their mental state was very heavily considered, and a fictional character. I mean, it's just wild. And that one's one of the more recent ones, which I think makes it all the more interesting. But great. Anything else you want to add before we clap for you? Okay. Thank you. Really wild. And yeah, they were young, and so was she, and like that whole case was just wild. Right. Who wants to go next? Yeah, go for it.
Unabomber.
Okay.
Can't really say that.
Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski. I'll help you out.
I think a lot of people like either forget or surprised that before did his like crimes and stuff, that he was like a really smart person. And like, I think he was like a Harvard student at like 16, and then he became the youngest professor hired at Berkeley.
Mhm.
So it goes to show like how smart he is, and like he moved to like a remote cabin out in the woods or like the wilderness, and his like environment was pretty much destroyed due to like left behind like industrialization. And that became like his like not his reason, but like his belief to like start bombing things, just because I guess like he was just like really upset with what was going on, or like what's not being taken care of.
Mhm.
And that led to him being nicknamed Unabomber, because the first three letters were like abbreviations for universities and airlines, because those were like his main bombers. And
his crimes include 10 counts of transportation, mailing, use of bombs, so pretty much just mailing bomb as soon as they opened it, blew up. That included 23 injured, 3 deaths total. 10 bombings total, but there are 14 bombs total. Out of those bombs, there was 2 defused, one at the University of Utah and one at Boeing Company in Washington. His main targets were college students, tech firms, university staff, and airline staff. One specific one at Lake Forest in Illinois, his main target was the CEO of United Airlines. Another one was American Airlines Flight 444. There's explosion mid-flight. Thankfully, everyone survived. Other ones include UC Berkeley twice, 3 years apart. The University of Michigan, the same year. 2 other occasions. Sacramento, California, 2 occasions, 1 month each occasion, and 10 years apart. And then his verdict was his brother actually turned in. Lawyers attempted an insanity defense to avoid the death penalty, but had to protect this. He requested to hire someone else and use anti-technology use as defense. His request was declined and had attempted suicide. And then he went to the psychiatrist and they diagnosed him with schizophrenia, and then later schizoid and schizotypal personality disorder as well. He avoided death penalty by pleading guilty to all charges and accepting life imprisonment without the possibility of prison. And he's currently being held in North Carolina, and he'll be turning 80 in closing.
And he wanted to, or his lawyers, like you said, wanted him to plead
Yeah.
insanity, but he did not want to. Right, so we have it kind of part of his case, but not real. Great, thank you. All right, we have a few more. Who wants to go? Yeah, okay, go.
So we did job motivation with the counselor,
Mhm.
and so he grew up in Chicago with his parents. His father was physically abusive and passive. Over the course of his life, he worked many jobs, such as in local politics, with as a mortuary attendant and the KFC manager. The position as a mortuary attendant was notable because there he snuck into the coffin and pressed his dead human for it. And it was one of the first signs, or one of the first times he expressed those unusual tastes, and it was a shock to him. And so after that, pretty much any job he had, he harassed one of the workers there, and he was arrested multiple times for sexual assault. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison, but he only served 18 months. Around this time, he underwent psychiatric evaluation. He was diagnosed with antisocial. So when he finally did the clown jig, we developed 2 clown personas. One of the clown was the happy one, and the clown was a serious one. As for his later crimes, he murdered at least 33 young men, and he buried 26 of them in the crawl space in his house. What he did was he would lure boys into his house and handcuff them under the guise of a magic trick.
he would demonstrate it on himself first, where he got out the handcuffs, the key. And then he would ask the boys if they wanted to try it themselves. And he just wouldn't give them the key. And then after that, with all of them, he would even kill them. Sometimes he even had things he called doubles, where he would murder two boys in the same.
John believes this order to stand trial for 3 of their murders, the largest number of murder charges brought against any single person in U.S. history at the time. Casey's assistants suggests that it was impossible to get an unbiased jury due to the media coverage. On February 2nd, 1980, the trial began. Casey's defense team announced during their opening statements that Casey was legally insane. An attempt to counteract the insanity of the defense. The families of some of Casey's victims were asked about Casey's mannerisms and all said he came across as a regular man. After all the prosecution evidence was presented, the defense presented their case. They wanted to sway the jury into believing that Casey was legally insane at the time of the murders, with Casey having repeatedly made references to multiple personalities. He had told investigators that there were 4 dogs inside of him and said that there was one named Jack who committed the murders because he was homophobic. Prosecutors contended that the normalcy Casey portrayed while out in public was evidence that he was legally sane. They called on Dr. Robert Reichman, who testified that Casey had tried to pretend to me that he had multiple personalities. Psychiatrists hired by the defense rebuffed, stating it was their belief that Casey was severely mentally ill. According to Dr. Reichman, however, Casey did not meet the legal test of insanity. Ultimately, the jury rejected the defense's claims of insanity and found John Wayne Gacy guilty of 33 murders, sexual assault, and taking indecent measures, and was sentenced to death. On May 9, 1994, that sentence was carried out via lethal injection in his last words were kissed by ass.
Colorful guy, right? Yeah. Wild red, and just absolutely rejected. We mentioned that last year that a lot of people tried to fake having multiple personalities. It's actually really difficult to do consistently, and it's going to be fun. So it's great. Anything else you want to add before? Great, thank you. Did you find your picture? Oh, I keep thinking about it, right? Somebody in my other class too had a close encounter with oh gosh, who was it? They had somebody as well. I was like, oh, that's 2 this semester. A lot of close calls. All right, we have a couple more who wants to go next. Yeah, go. Okay.
Her story was really interesting, so I also watched a documentary about it, and it shed a lot of light about the background story that wasn't written online. So she was struggling with depression since she was 17, and she committed the crime when she was 37. So it was 20 years of really severe depression. And her crime was that she killed all of her 5 children during postpartum psychosis, and she drowned them in the bathtub, and then she put their bodies on the bed. And so basically her background was that when she was younger, she actually maintained quite normal life, I would say. She completed 2 years of nursing program and she worked as a nurse. And her friend said, she was a really nice person, but she was also a pleaser. So basically she wanted to please everyone in her environment. When she got married, she was like that also with her husband. So she gave birth for the first child. And after that, she stopped working and she stayed at home the whole time during all of her births. And she got more depressed. And after the 4th child, her psychiatrist told her and her husband not to have another child because it will make her depression even worse. And that's actually what happened. And they decided they want to have another child even though they were born. And she also has a history of going in and out of mental institutions regularly. And she got a lot of medication, tons of them antidepressants and different ones, and none of them basically solved the problem. And the crime happened when she was unsupervised. Their psychiatrist said that her condition is extremely severe and she needs to be supervised 24/7 basically. And her husband made an agreement with her because she wanted her to be more independent. So we decided that 1 hour every morning, you won't be at home, and give her space. And this is basically when she committed the crime and drowned children. In terms of the legal proceedings, she at first was accused with 5 capital murders, and she was she was sentenced to life in prison. After 4 years, she appealed again and she was declared as insane. And the judge decided she needs to be committed to a mental institution instead. And basically, the interesting thing is that she can be released from the mental institution if she will go to her review every year, but she refuses to do so. So basically, she decided that she wanted to end her life in the mental institution. Yeah. That's
Yeah, it's a really sad story, right? Because her literally, like the psychiatrist and the physician said, don't have any more children. What was that? Yeah.
They basically convinced her that women are evil and they're no good. And basically, she said that she did the crime to save her children.
Yeah.
Because she was convinced she's the devil. So she needed to save her kids from her.
Yeah, that they weren't going to develop properly with her. Really sad. Yeah, and her trial, as you mentioned, really complicated, right? Guilty and then later found not guilty by reason of insanity. You see that a lot with this topic, that people have very complicated legal proceedings, right? That it's like one trial after another, and then it's, you know, and then there's all these appeals and revisited multiple times. But great. All right, thank you, Dr. Alvita. Right. I think two more, right? Yeah, you want to go next? Great.
So I like trying to be assignment by myself. I chose to do research on Maria Bobbitt.
Okay.
So her background, she grew up in a middle-class family and realized she had a relatively normal life. She then met her former husband, John Bobbitt, in the Marines. And then they got married, and she, in like the 90s, and then she claimed that John became abusive shortly after the marriage. And she had pressed charges against him, but they were dropped when John started going to counseling. And then they separated a couple years into their marriage, and then got back together later. And then the abuse continued. So then the crime she committed was she cut off her husband's penis while he was asleep, because she claimed that he was abusive and he raped her. And so her trial began in January 1994, and she was charged with malicious wounding. And her defense team claimed that she had temporarily gone insane due to enduring years of abuse from her husband. And then later that month, when the trial ended, she was found not guilty due to her insanity plea. And while she didn't go to prison, she had to go to this hospital for a psychiatric evaluation, which lasted for 45 days. And from what I read, she, since she didn't go to prison, she became like an advocate for domestic abuse. And that's all I had.
And really wild, and I think we mentioned, I can't remember if this is possibly the other one, but her husband, right, they didn't find his penis in the woods, surgically reattached it, and all functioning was still like there. He became an adult film star. Franken penis and John Wayne uncut. Yeah. John Wayne uncut and Franken penis, like no joke, he became famous. So really just random little piece of information. But thank you. Right, and she was one of two, so Francine here, which also endured quite a bit of abuse. That her husband on fire also got not guilty by reason of insanity for years of abuse. Seems like cases of that for women have been maybe a little bit more, or have received a little bit more of the not guilty by reason of insanity than some of the other ones. So the crimes seem a little more connected than, like, you know, murdering 30 other people. So you could see it's just wild that, you know, each one of these is so nuanced and different. I have a couple more. Anyone want to go next? Yeah.
Before I wanted to mention about the Kaczynski one.
Yeah.
If you don't mind,
Sure.
That's the one I'm doing, and the one and this one are things that I remember. And that man, and so if you can imagine living in the now and realize there's a murderer sending random bombs in the mail.
Yeah.
And it was really quite bizarre nationally, because this man was so smart that he was not caught. But the only way he was actually caught, and this is again Kaczynski, was he was contacting the FBI, but they could still not figure out who he was. But he said, I have a manifesto about my beliefs. If you will agree to publish my beliefs nationally, I might stop. So there was this talk in the culture, like, should we make a deal with any murderer? Would there be people who appearing and saying, I need you to publish what I believe? But they decided to do it. A couple of people refused, but they decided to do it. And that's actually how they caught him. The FBI could not catch this man. His brother saw the manifesto that was printed and said, gee, this sounds like my brother Mark's ratings every Thanksgiving. So if they hadn't published a manifesto, and then the brother went to the FBI and said, I think this is my brother Ted, who is a hermit. And there was a several $100,000 reward, and that the brother gave it all to the victims. So I will say that too. And that's the only reason that he ever got caught, actually.
It's amazing. If you go back to some of these older, like if any of you watched the Ted Bundy tapes, like on, and some of these older, like killers that are, decades back. I mean, they didn't get caught because the states couldn't communicate with each other, right? Like you could commit a crime in one state and go a state over, and they'd have no idea the other crime because of just the lack of technology. It's so wild versus now, everything is so connected, right? And it's so much harder to get away with anything, but some of these killers from like the 70s and 80s or even before, it was so hard to find them, or to track down them, right? It's really wild difference in generational timing.
So I'll leave into mine, which is Hinckley. John Hinckley in 1981, if you can imagine like a random news day, they had announced the president was appearing at some event, I believe in Washington or Baltimore, Maryland, just like was going to go visit some people in a hospital or something. So this man showed up and shot the president and badly injured him, and 3 other people, and was caught immediately by the Secret Service shooting. And it turns out that the reason this man shot the president was he was genuinely insane. And he goes, they go, why did you do this? He said, well, I have a connection with the actress Jodie Foster. He says, who was, literally about you age, in her early 20s as actress, was I have a connection with Jodie Foster. And this is kind of how I kind of want to impress her. I want to show her I'm out there. And so there's actually was a trial. And I actually think the reason that this man sort of got acquitted, which he did, was that his family was worth millions. His parents were wealthy. They hired any number of psychiatrists, but he had been mentally ill for years, and that same thing was known to the family. And he was acquitted. The way the instruction said that if you think this man was not in his right hand, then you must legally find him innocent, which the jury did. And there was public outrage at the time because they had filmed this clip of the president, so it was filmed. It's like, how can this man be found innocent when there's a film of him walking up with a gun and shooting? And they changed some of the insanity laws, but he was found. He pleaded it as he was crazy. He then was confined to a mental institution, even though he was found innocent. But he was so mentally ill that he would come up for review like every certain amount of time. And they finally allowed him like outings, like to go out for lunch under supervision. But he was actually just released unconditionally last year. And he would be a little older than myself, so he had probably in his 70s. He was released last year unconditionally. But so if you want to do the math, he was confined for 41 years for the attempted murder. It wasn't like he said he gave 6 years of therapy and got out or something.
Right.
He was confined and so that was him.
Yeah, and some people never are released. It's wild, even being found not guilty because they're so mentally ill and unaware of reality, right?
Yes.
Oftentimes it might even be worse than a jail sentence, and 41 years is a long time. And there's a while, if you look it up, you can see the actual letter that he wrote Jodie Foster. He wrote a letter to Jodie Foster, the actress, about his intention. Really interesting and disturbing. You should look it up later if you have a moment, or if you're curious. But yeah, really interesting case. Thank you for that. I think we have one more. Is there one more? Did we get everybody? I've written down Chapman. Did somebody mark David Chapman? No? I have it circled, but everybody who wanted to go is gone, and they might not be, but okay. Well, thank you. I know I didn't give you a choice, but thank you for presenting. Then again, there's a bunch of people who are up here that we didn't talk about, but I mean, even in the ones that we did, you can see a lot of them who seem on the surface to be very insane, right? Or disturbed at the very least, did not get granted that plea, right? It's a very uncommon thing to get even amongst these big cases here. And so we'll leave these folks behind here, but lots of really interesting and frightening cases related to this. What we'll look at for our last bit here is the other side of this coin, how the law affects psychology, right? So we talked about how psychology affects the law and legal proceedings. And now if you want to practice in the field of psychology as a therapist or a counselor or a teacher or school psychologist or researcher or whatnot, there are rules that protect clients and people, right? So now on this side, we're looking at how the law can affect psychology. Right? And so when we're in this realm, we're talking about a couple of things, mainly patients' rights on this slide, and then we'll talk about some like ethical and moral concerns on the next one. But patients do have rights. Now, this wasn't always the case. If you remember way back to chapter 1, we talked about how people were committed against their will, thrown into asylum, awful massive state hospitals where they basically rotted in their own filth and were subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments. That is wonderfully no longer the case. People do have rights as a patient. Now, there are cases where that might not, you can kind of go around that in a way, but there's something called civil commitment. You can actually have somebody committed against their will. Right. And if you've ever heard the term 5150 before, that is the legal term for committing somebody for up to 72 hours because they're a danger to themselves or a danger to others. So if somebody is threatening to harm someone else or threatening to harm themselves, you can have them civilly committed for up to 72 hours, usually either in a police station or a psychiatric hospital against their will. And again, that's called a 5150, or that's the legal term for a civil commitment. But when somebody is institutionalized, whether it's for a short period of time or a longer period of time, they do have rights. They have a right to treatment and they have a right to refuse treatment. And I will tell you, it's a very fine line at times between the two. So you cannot put somebody in an institution or hold them against their will and not treat them. And we did this for years, hundreds of years. We'd hold people against their will and not treat them, or treat them very inhumanely. And so if somebody is institutionalized, they have the right to receive adequate treatment, a very basic right. They have the right to human care and food and to be safe, right? They have the right to receive medication or therapy or whatever it is they might need. But they also have the right to say, I don't want that, right? So if you say, I believe that you need to take medication for this mental illness that you have, they have the right to say, no, I don't want to take that. Right? You can't force them to take the medication. You can't force them to undergo electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy as we did in the past, unless, right, they're not in their right mind, in which case we can have a family member override that. Right? So let's say somebody has schizophrenia and they're not able to understand what's going on in the treatment being presented for them. A family member can kind of circumvent that and have them then be required, they can sign a form to have them then take medication. Did you have a
They have them do treatment, take the medication?
They don't
They're
have to.
technically,
Sure. So the main goal of a 5150 hold, like a 72-hour hold, is to just keep someone from hurting themselves or someone else. So typically they might not receive a whole lot of treatment in such a short period of time, as much as you're just detaining them and keeping them out of trouble. So they do have the right to treatment, to see somebody, right, or to have representation. But this is typically more in like longer term hospitalizations, right? Where somebody is going to be there for much longer. You can't lock somebody up against their will and not treat them, was the idea, because we did that for a long time, right? And you can't force somebody, as we did for a long time as well, to undergo treatments they don't want to do. But again, you can't kind of get around that. So in this 5150, it's normally just like a short-term hold. And then you might transfer somebody to a facility where they stay longer or get them help and then they're released, kind of depending on that.
We want to bring people that are thinking of people to hospital.
Mhm.
It's like, he'd be there the rest of his, be there his rest of his shit,
Yeah,
because, you know, he's at the hospital.
right. Having to just watch them, right? And,
Yep.
and yeah, because we don't have as many psychiatric
Not-
hospitals anymore.
You're booking them in the jail after that hold.
Yeah.
Or you're just like, say they're on 5150 and you're transporting them from jail to the hospital. You have to have two police officers transfer.
Well, there's so many rules. Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a fine line. I have this right here. It's difficult to balance protecting a patient's rights with unintentionally depriving them of like the opportunity for recovery. Like it's such a fine line. You want to help them, but you don't want to force them. You want to protect them, but you don't want to detain them longer than you need to. And the whole idea behind this is to try and counter all the awful things we did for so many years, right? And to give people a much more humane approach. But this is not an easy balance, right? And there are often times where family members will kind of go around it in order to make sure somebody receives a treatment. It can be even more complicated if somebody's a minor. In those cases, it can get wildly complicated. But yeah, I mean, it's 5150s happen a lot, unfortunately. And it's for the safety of that individual or the safety of people they maybe are threatening. This is our last slide. Just let that sink in right now. Yeah, it'll take us a few minutes though. So there are a lot of ethical guidelines for therapists, right? If you're practicing as a therapist or a counselor or psychiatrist, anything in that realm, there are an incredible number of ethical guidelines. And I will tell you, this is probably one of the more challenging classes I took in graduate school because it's such a like case by case kind of thing. But there are quite a few of these codes of ethics. And so we'll talk about some of these big ones up here. They're principles and rules for ethical behavior designed to guide decisions and actions by members of a profession. So if you are practicing as a therapist or even a researcher or a professor of psychology, there are things that you have to follow, or you could go to jail. You could lose your license, you could be fired, you could be fined, or just shunned in like the research or academic community. There are an absolute ton of these. These are some of the big ones, and we can talk about them as we go through. The first one, and this seems super obvious and basic, but psychologists are permitted to offer advice, right? So you are permitted as a therapist or psychologist to give your opinion and offer advice to a client or to somebody that you are seeing or has hired you. You can go on television or the radio or whatever and offer advice on social media. But you have to stay within your limitations, which is the third one. You can't give advice beyond your area of expertise. So if you don't know something or you're kind of unqualified to give advice, you're supposed to say that and refer them to somebody else. When in doubt, you're supposed to refer to somebody who can help them. Another way limitations might manifest is, let's say you have somebody come to you who is a convicted pedophile. And you're not able to work with that person objectively because of your views on pedophilia. You, in theory, should refer them because it would be a limitation of yours. Right? So you have to stay within your area of expertise. You can offer advice, but acknowledge limitations. You cannot conduct fraudulent research or publish false data, right? And a lot of people get into trouble for this. They publish something that was false or based off misleading premises. Other stuff, if you're going to evaluate and testify in a legal case, it has to be based on sufficient information, right? So again, the whole idea here is that you are offering advice and working within your limits, right? So working within your area of expertise. You may not take advantage of clients or students sexually or otherwise. This is a really, really interesting one, right? You are encouraged to not have what are called dual relationships with your therapists. So I am no longer a therapist. I'm just an instructor. Like I don't do therapy anymore. But if I was a therapist, I could not be your therapist and your instructor. Because that would be a dual relationship. I would have too much power over you, and that's not allowed. In small towns, this gets very complicated, right? If your client is a dentist, you cannot go to your client as your dentist, because that would create a dual relationship. But if your client is in your therapy, right, you can't become friends with them or enter into a relationship with them. You have to mark your calendar 3 years. 3 years after you have stopped seeing somebody as a client, you can then enter into a sexual romantic relationship with them after 3 years. So even if somebody comes to you once and you're like, oh my God, I'm attracted to this person, I think I'm interested, you still have to wait 3 years before entering into a relationship with them. You can technically, friends is a gray area, but you can't enter into a romantic relationship. Any kind of like sexual or romantic relationship creates a dual power dynamic that isn't allowed. And when I worked, when I was up in Humboldt, I went to Humboldt State, right? And I was training to be a therapist. It's a very small town. And it would be a challenge because you run into your clients out in the world. Like it was something that would happen, right? Like I would be out grocery shopping and my client, I'd be at Starbucks, client, like you'd see them everywhere. And you're not allowed to acknowledge them unless they acknowledge you first, because it might reveal your relationship with them. So we would be out in public and like, I'd get all weird and my partner would be like, is that a client? And I'm like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not allowed to say anything, but she would know every time because I get all weird. Like, I'd be like, I'm not allowed to look at this person. Like, it's so awkward because as a person, you want to be like, hi, but you can't, right? Because then you're revealing your relationship with that individual. So there's a lot of rules about dual power dynamics. It gets very tricky and complicated, and you're supposed to avoid them at all costs. Just like you're not supposed to enter into a sexual relationship with like a student or become friends with a student while you're teaching them, because then it's a dual power dynamic, right? And you have to avoid those whenever possible. Yeah.
As we run down this list, and you're now years of experience. How well is this followed?
Pretty well, I will say. Yeah, and because the consequences are severe, right? Like if you, and they portray this in the media all the time, right? The media is always like, you know, you enter into a relationship with your therapist and they take advantage of you, or there's dual cleaning all the time. And you'll lose your license. And so you'll never be able to practice again. All those years of education and training gone, you know, you could go to jail for that. And so the consequences are so severe that people are typically pretty good at following this. There's always the case for somebody down, right? But even a smaller one, it's not up here. You're not allowed to give therapists gifts. Technically, therapists aren't supposed to accept gifts. My poor therapist, I think I shared with you that I go to therapy and I have for years. I always give her a gift at the holidays. She's like, you know, you're not allowed to give me a gift. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry. Here it is anyway. I always put her in an awkward spot. I should stop. And it's usually just like a piece of candy or something. You're not even supposed to accept gifts from clients. You know, there's gray areas like that, but the bigger things people are typically pretty good at following because the consequences are so
I mean,
hard.
you say specifically, well, that's the, and I'd be correct that. The media is sort of the slanted, the other way is not true, more or less as a plot device.
It could be, right? I mean, there's so many, I just finished, what was it in this class? Somebody recommended The Patients. I just finished watching it last night. One more, okay, and I won't run it. But like, so I went and watched it, right? I watched Wednesday, then 1899, and then The Patient all in like 1 week. Like I crushed it this week. I'm like binge watching. I should be doing other things, but I did that instead. But yeah, I mean, like in that, like the boundaries, oh my goodness, like the boundaries in there, like kidnapping your therapist and holding them hostage in your basement, you know, I'm like, we could go on about the problems, right? But I mean, people, I think the media likes to do that because there's such a dynamic there, that it just makes it interesting and like vulnerable. I mean, think about if you go to a therapist, you're sharing with them your most vulnerable things, right? And so they have a lot of power emotionally. And they could abuse that very easily. And these things are in place to keep them from abusing it because you're so vulnerable. And there's also a lot of rules about touch. You're not supposed to hug or touch, like touch within a therapeutic venue is very discouraged, which is like a little bit sad in a way, because I think a lot of people oftentimes could just use a hug or like a reassuring touch. And even that, there's so many rules about, like, you can't initiate it. If you hug a client, it has to be what's called a tent hug, where you like are like away from their body. There's so many rules. It just goes on and on. Is that a?
So is it same with like the rights of like the doctor not sharing information from one patient to the other?
Sure, that's this, which we'll get to next, right? Yeah, that's definitely
Because
a huge one.
Have that too. They can say like, I had a, they don't say their name,
Yeah.
their age, their whole summary.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I think for me, and I've shared this with a couple of you who've talked to me about this, like after class, one of the hardest things for me about being a therapist was not being able to talk about everything on my day with my partner. Like I'm a talker. Like I love to talk about everything and anything. And I would come home and it'd be like, how was your day? And I couldn't share details. And I hated that. Like to my core, I hated it. It felt like weird to me, but it's important. Mm-hmm.
She's like, can't watch me do my work.
Yeah.
Because technically it's confidential.
You have to go in another room and it has to all be private.
And technically they're not supposed to talk about what
Mhm.
he, like, what he did as a police officer
Right.
and what she did at work, because that's like the same type of thing as
Yeah.
confidentiality.
Yeah, you have to be really careful. You can't share details. You can talk in broad, like generalities. Like I had a client today who's struggling with cancer, but you can't say he or she or
Like no
any,
names
no,
or ages or things.
nothing, right? Or acknowledging somebody when you see them and so on. It's a lot. It's a lot to,
It was kind of weird because when COVID started, my mom was like, I need an office at the door. And I realized why, because of the
Yeah.
confidentiality,
yeah. Yeah, and there's been a lot of interesting rules about, because so many things have gone video or virtual
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. And that creates its whole own set of rules of who can be there and who can be around and what the rules are for the therapist. And it's complicated. Any other thoughts or questions or anything before we talk about the last couple of things? Yeah. 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 And oftentimes therapists will, right? Like mine's had a talk with me like 6 times now about like, you're not supposed to give me presents, right? I'm like, I know. And like, I'll see her tomorrow. And I'll be like, I feel bad. I'm sorry, right? I'll probably apologize. As I give her a present. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I mean, they usually will tell you these things. Usually it's if they come up, right? And so like if a client like looks at the therapist and it's like, I really like, can I have a hug? Like, is there anyone give me a hug? At that point, the therapist might say, I'm actually allowed to. Or like if I see you in public, and I don't acknowledge you, it's not because I didn't recognize you or don't care. It's because of X, right? And so it might be that it comes up after the fact, then you process it and talk about it. Or it might be something you talk about ahead of time, especially this one. This one's usually talked about ahead. Did you have a specific example in mind or just a general? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like, and if I see one of you in public, I'll wave at you. Like, like we don't have confidentiality here, but like, but yeah, if you see like your therapist in public, and they don't wave at you or say hi, this is why. It's not because they, don't care. Maybe they don't care. I mean, some people don't, but most likely. Anyone else for the moment? Anything else? This is probably the biggest one. Confidentiality. Right, and this is something that you would definitely share at the beginning. What you would tell your client is anything that you share with me is confidential. What that means is I'm not going to tell anyone else, right? Everything that you share with me is between you and me. There are exceptions though. Yeah. Yeah, right. That's a big part of it, right? It gets complicated when you have people who are under 18. But yeah, right. You have patient rights. Right? There's a protection of your rights as a client or a patient that if you tell me, all this stuff about your life, I'm not going to go out and tell it to somebody else. And that's part of the confidentiality of not acknowledging someone in public because you would give away their identity, right? Or your relationship, maybe. So anyone know what one of the exceptions is? There are a couple exceptions to confidentiality. Cases where a therapist or even an instructor, a teacher, a priest, like certain people who have a duty to protect are bound to share that information. Yeah,
I mean, I'm also a teacher, so they're like, we also have the duty to protect.
yeah,
Our people. And in my case, they told me that if, for example, they are victim of abuse
yeah.
or, like something that extremely severe happens,
Mhm,
we must tell the kids that we can stay confidential and we must report it.
mhm,
They told us, don't tell the child you won't tell it to anyone. They need to know that you have to tell it.
mhm.
So I assume it's probably the same. If someone is going through abuse or probably they will try to harm someone else.
Yeah, those are both, right? So child or elder abuse is one of them. So if a client or a student, right, tells you that I am being abused and they're a minor, you have a duty to protect them and report it. If they're an elderly and being abused, you have a duty to protect and report it. You have to file that information or contact somebody. If they tell you I am going to hurt somebody tomorrow, right? Tomorrow I plan to murder my neighbor, right? You have a duty to protect that person and report it. And so, yeah, anyone who has a duty to protect, like a teacher, a therapist, priests, right? Anyone in like a
Teachers are mandated reporters.
mandated reporters. Yeah, if you're a mandated reporter, that means you have a duty to protect. If one of you came up to me and said, I plan to murder my biology instructor tomorrow because of the final they're gonna give me, no, I don't know. Right, I plan to murder him tomorrow. I would have a duty to report that. Right, so please don't tell me that. Yeah, did you have a thought or a question? Yes, that's the other one, right? So I plan to hurt myself, or I plan to hurt somebody else, or child or elder abuse. Those are the ones that you have a duty to protect. Now, here's where it gets wild. A client can tell you, and this came up in like the patient, right? A client can tell you, I murdered 57 people yesterday. And you cannot share that information. You are legally required to keep their confidentiality. So they can come to you and be like, I want to tell you about the 50 people I murdered yesterday. All the details, here are their names, here's everything. And you cannot do anything with that because you are bound by confidentiality. Now, there are ways around that. So if one of the people that they murdered was a child, you could find a way to like justify that another child might be in danger. If they tell you I plan to murder 50 people tomorrow, then you have to report and protect those 50 people. But they can tell you, it's almost like going to confession, right? They can tell you I murdered 50 people yesterday and you just have to sit with that. You could go to jail yourself if you divulge that information to an authority. So that's where it gets kind of wild, right? It's important to have confidentiality. Otherwise, why would you share information with somebody? Right? If I'm going to tell you stuff and it's not safe, why would I? Right? But there are limits because you do have that duty to protect someone. And that's important too, right? You want to feel like people around you are safe or like you're going to watch out for other people, but you also don't want that information to be shared. Yeah.
So you can do that only with like future cases?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
So if they say, I plan to harm someone today, I plan to harm myself today, right? Something like that, you have to report it.
But if they confess the crime they did yesterday, you can't do anything with it.
You cannot, right? And again, there are ways around it, right? Of
Like if you
course,
suspect they will try to do it again
Yeah.
tomorrow, but they don't tell you what
Right.
to do in this case.
right. Yeah, so if you, let's say that you suspect that they're going to continue doing that, then you could find a way around it. So when I say report, right, there are agencies that you call to file a report. And what they do is they consult with you. So you call them. I've had to do this a couple of times. So like Child Protective Services, for example, you call them and you say, my client has reported like a case of child abuse. Do I need to follow up on this? And they will tell you what to do and you follow the steps. And so you contact somebody with an agency who then helps you take it from there. And if they're like a danger to themselves, it might be that you create a contract with them, or you contact somebody in their life, or you have them 5150'd if it's that severe. The idea is that you take steps, right? And in general, if you act within like your best judgment, you're usually safe. It's when you ignore stuff and don't do anything that you could, in theory, get involved. Did you have a?
So what if you suspect that your client doesn't actually like
Yeah.
tell you it like, okay, I'm gonna do A, B, C, D.
Yeah, that's when it's super blurry, right?
You can't report anything, even if you
Yeah.
like assume or
Mhm.
you have an idea that it's gonna happen in the next month,
Sure.
2 weeks.
When in doubt, you consult, right? And so very common that therapists go to therapy, right? And a big reason that they do that is they can talk about their clients in therapy with another therapist, because that other therapist is also bound by confidentiality. So for example, like when I was a counselor, when I was a therapist, I had a supervisor and we had a group, and we would meet once a week and talk about our clients. And so if you had questions or concerns, or you needed to process something, you could talk about that with other therapists because they can't repeat it and they're bound by confidentiality. So it's very common that therapists have therapists that they go to. And it might be at their work or somebody privately to talk about their clients because they can't talk about them with anyone else. So, and they actually reward that when you're doing your number of hours as a trainee, they encourage you to go to therapy yourself. They count it double. So you have to do something like 3,000 hours. If you go to therapy yourself, every 1 therapy hour counts as 2 hours because they want you to have that in place. So very common, you can talk about this with another therapist, but not with a random person. Yeah.
I was wondering if you've ever been asked this, but how does the Patriot Act or the Patriot Act affect this? I want to
Oh, yeah.
from your perspective.
That's messy. So with the Patriot Act, the government can step in and ask you to release information. And typically what would happen is a therapist would say, like, no, I'm bound by confidentiality. All they need is like a warrant or subpoena and they can override that. Right. So your records are safe for the most part. But if something is flagged by like the government and they step in, they can have access to your records and get all of that information as they would like. Right. So it gets messy.
Person's record that they are collecting, you as like a therapist can't like let them know that they're being like acknowledged by the government, right?
Let the client know, you mean, or?
Like the client, like, you know, like how like if a client tells you about like a past crime and you're like legally like tied to not like
Yeah.
let anyone know,
Mhm.
would that apply to them in this case? Since the government is like collecting information about them?
It could.
Okay.
It gets really involved, right? So the government, through the Patriot Act, does have the right to intercede and have access to your files for almost any reason that they would like. Now, does that happen very often? No. But let's say like your client is like a murderer who's committed all these murders and they've been flagged by the government, they could intercede and ask for your records and have full access to them if they wanted. And you could go to jail and be fined or lose a license for not cooperating. Yeah, so it gets messy, or you could go to trial and have to testify against your client. You know, I mean, and so most of the time those things aren't things that come up commonly, but they can. The big stuff is again, this one is probably the biggest one here, confidentiality. But there are others too. There's just so many rules and they're all there to protect that client, you know, so that their trust isn't violated or their, you know, that power dynamic isn't violated and so on. Really interesting, difficult class, right? Probably like, again, one of the more difficult, that and like neuropsych, we were talking about neuroscience, right? Difficult classes in psychology because it's so many, like, it's such a case by case kind of thing. Any other questions or thoughts or anything else here? Okay. I do. And like now tomorrow, I feel like I'm going to have to apologize. I'll be like, I won't bring you a candy cane for Christmas this year. Right? I've gotten better, right? But I always want to give her stuff. So a couple of things really quickly before we're done for today. I just want to remind you that I won't see you on Wednesday. So Wednesday, we won't have traditional class. You'll be taking your exam, just like with the first two. It'll open up at 12:01 a.m. and it'll close at 11:59. So you have the entire span of the day to take it. You can use your notes and your book. You can use all of that stuff. Remember that there is a study guide on Canvas. If you click on modules, it's right here, study guide number 3. So it's everything since the last test. So if it's on the study guide, make sure you know it. It will be on the exam. If it's not on there, you can let it go. Obviously, you have this hour and 15 minutes free. So at the very least, you could take it at this time from 10 to 11:15. But if you would like to take it later or earlier in the day, it will be open all day for you. Just please don't miss it, since that is our final. I won't see you after today necessarily. Like I said, I will post the final exam schedule on our campus site. If you want to come meet with me, I will be here. I will also be here on Wednesday during our class time, if you would like to check in with me. But I want to just thank you all for a really amazing semester. This has been a really awesome class. I was concerned in the beginning because there's only like 25 of you, and it's the smallest class I think I've ever had. You know, everything's different, COVID, everything now. But this has been a really cool class, and really sad that it's over. So if any of you want to take another class with me, I'm here. Otherwise, you can come say hi. I always have candy, so come say hi to me. If you need some sugar, come find me. I have candy in my office, right? But I'll hang out for a little bit if you have any questions. I'm also I'm about a third of the way through grading your final papers. So you'll see those scores like populating in the coming days. I'm working on it, and I'll try and have them done soon so that you can kind of calculate what you need on the final. But please study for that. And again, I'm here if you want to meet anytime in the next week. And I'll hang out for a little bit if you have any questions or anything. So good luck on all your finals. Have a wonderful winter break. And thank you. Thank you again for a wonderful semester. Oh, don't forget to turn in your sheet with your names on it as well before you go.